If you're considering buying land in Utah, today's video you don't want to miss. I am talking about everything you need to know about buying land in Utah, so stay tuned. Okay, so first things first, I am out camping on my annual family trip in Sand Hollow. So you're going to have more noise in the background than I would normally have, so apologies for that, but I figured this was the perfect setting to do this video because of all the land behind me. So first things first, when you're buying land, you have to understand it is not as easy as buying a house, and you really need to know what you're doing and have an agent that knows what they're doing when it comes to raw land and purchasing it, because your due diligence with land is not nearly as easy and much more extensive than when you just buy a single family home. Now, as a licensed agent in Utah, you can sell raw land, you can sell houses, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you should. You need to have some familiarity with raw land. And I know people personally that they didn't have the best advice when it came to building on land or buying land to build on. And they're kind of in a predicament now because of that. So, like I said, due diligence is not as easy. There are things that you need to do as a buyer for your due diligence. There's going to be testing that might need to be done. There might be site plans that need to be done on the property because there are rules and regulations, and they vary depending on where you're at with how much of a slope the land has and if they will allow you to build or not. For instance, if there's in Salt Lake County in one of the canyons up there, if you have more than a 35% slope, you cannot build near it. So there are things like that that you have to know and understand and know where to get those answers as part of your due diligence. Because of the slopes that are involved, and every canyon is different. So if you're looking at mountain property, every area is different, and they have different rules and regulations for protecting that area. So again, the slope is going to be a determining factor. Now, understand that some of these tests can run you $5,000 to do if the seller does not have them. Okay, so one of the first things you need to know is, do you have water rights with this land, or are you connected to city or county water? That can be possible depending on the land. But today we're going to talk more about raw land that you would need to do well and you would need to do septic. So for water rights, usually that comes with the land, but you need to make sure, because water rights are worth a lot of money, and some sellers would rather keep it and sell it separate than the land. So make sure you have water rights, because we are high desert, you can see behind me. So if you buy land without water rights, it's kind of useless land because you can't build on it, or you'll have to purchase it. Just to give you an idea, depending on where in the state you are, you can see water rights or an acre foot of water that is sometimes up to $30,000. I've never seen anything less than about 15,000 lately, for 1 acre foot of water. So it can be very costly if the land does not come with it, and it can be very difficult to find the water right depending on where you live and where the property is at in the state. Now, there are some places in the state of Utah that you can still buy a water right and get a new one, but most of the state, that's not the case. So again, this is going to be part of your due diligence. This is going to be part of knowing what to look for with buying land. Depending on where you're at in the state and which water source the water is coming from, they can protest it and appeal it. I have personally purchased land less than 2 years ago, and this happened to me. It took over a year for the state of Utah to approve the water right transfer from the previous owner to me. because of the appeals process and all of that comes with it. Now, the other part of it is if you do not use your water right within 7 years, the way it was intended to, whether that is for watering fields, for crops, or cattle, or a house, whatever it is, you could potentially lose your water right. So, again, need to know these ins and outs of things. You also cannot drill a well without a water right. And any well driller in the state, they are licensed and they are going to request a card, is what they call it, a card, and they have to fill that out and turn it into the state when they drill your well. Now, when it comes to drilling your well, you need to know how much that's going to cost. It is in 15,000 plus range, usually, depending again on where in the state you are drilling your well, but also how deep you're going with your well is going to determine that as well. So if you're considering buying some raw land in Utah, reach out to me. Calling or texting me is best. I am familiar with the process because, like I said, I have gone through it firsthand within the last about year and a half, and also have experience selling other land and everything that comes with it. Okay, let's talk septic. You need to have septic. Again, the land we're talking about is not connected to the city septic system. So with septic tanks, you're going to have a perk test, and that is a soils test. And there's a lot more to it when you put in a septic than just the perk test and the soils, because there are things that you technically pass the perk test. However, you have to be outside of so many feet from bedrock and things like that to put in a septic. You also have minimum setbacks of either 50 or 100 feet for a septic system close to water sources, and that includes even like dry streams. They have a 50-foot setback, the health department does, on things like that. So there are definitely things that really need to be researched with your septic, because if you cannot put a septic in, your lot or your land is not buildable because you need to have some sort of septic system on the property. Your septic system will also determine how big of a house you can build. So depending on the leach field and the size of the well for the septic, things like that, will determine you can have a 3-bedroom house, you can have a 4-bedroom house, you can have a 2-bedroom house, whatever it is. So understand that your septic, if you're planning on building some big, beautiful, extreme house, your septic may limit you on that. So there is a lot that goes into buying raw land in Utah. I can't go over every single scenario and all of that. So I have other tips if you are looking at buying land in Utah or you're making a real estate move. Make sure you connect with me. Again, calling or texting is best. I am always here to help. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and click that bell. That way you're alerted each week when I drop a new video. I am going to put a link in the description from the Utah Division of Water Rights, and you can hear exactly from them what the difference is between a water right and a water share. That term gets confused often. It gets used interchangeably, things like that. So if you want to know the difference between a water right and a water share, you can check out that video directly from the Utah Division of Water down there in the description. But as always, make it a great day.